Hi, I'm Cindi McGee, and you're watching PolymerClayTV. Today's pattern to polymer tutorial is inspired by this beautiful gel printed collage created by Marilyn McMahon Pickett. I started with some Primo Sculpey White, which I rolled to a 4 on my pasta machine. To add some color, I'm using some black shimmer metallic luster and some gray pan pastel. And I'm going to just use this foam applicator and randomly apply dabs of it here and there. I'm trying to mimic the background on that original gel collage. The metallic luster just gives a tiny bit of sheen here and there. For the pink flowers, I'm using actually some scrap pink Primo that I had and rolled to a setting 4, and I'm going to use some assorted shades of pan pastels to add some color here and there on the surface. This is magenta. Some of my pastels I used for another project, so I had some loose particles, which is fine. And this is permanent red tint. And this is pearlescent red. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white. Placing a piece of parchment over it and just pressing it down to start embedding those particles. And then I'm just going to use my hands to gently smudge them here and there. I can add more of the colors that I want here and there, etc. It's just an overall multicolored shades of pink effect. I'm just going to use my craft knife and cut some small sort of off-shaped, not perfectly shaped petals. I want them a little organic in feel. I'm going to cut several of those with my craft knife, and then I'm going to set this aside. Next, I'm using some scrap Primo yellow that I had. I believe this is Sunshine that I rolled to a 4 on the clay machine, and I'm going to add some coloration to the surface of that also. Again, I'm using my pan pastels. I've got a couple of different shades of dark yellow. I think this is yellow ochre and another yellow. I can use specks or I can use my sponge. Just randomly apply it. I usually use my fingers. That's just easier for me. And I'm going to add a little white here and there too. If you look at that original gel print, you'll see that the yellow flowers have a bit of a sort of zigzaggy, squiggly line here and there. To create that effect, I'm using my Crazy Coral texture sheet from CreateAlong and a black permanent ink pad, and I'm just going to stamp bits of it here and there. Again, the overall effect of this gel print collage is muted colors and patterns. Add a little bit of that texture here, and then I think I'll grab my Cindy's Peacock's texture mat because that's sort of a nice random design, and add a little of that. It's okay if it overlaps. I'm using the smallest petal cutter from the Daisy Petals Cutter collection from CreateAlong to cut an assortment of different petals from this sheet that I've created. I'm going to take each of these petals and now I'm going to basically mush them and flatten them a bit and make them a bit rounder, more organic in feel. I can take the texture sheet and add a little more texture over the surface if I want. And then I'm just going to begin layering them to make some flowers. That center gets really thick, so I'm just going to use a small hole cutter to cut out that thick section of center of each flower. We don't really need that. For the leaves, I'm using some scrap green Primo that I had. It's a blend of colors, and I've rolled it to a 4 on the clay machine, and I'm using the Trip to India silk screen from CreateAlong. Place it with the darker colored side down, and I'm going to silk screen this with my pan pastels. I'm going to use this chartreuse green, bright yellow green it's called, and a little bit of this green too, which I've got some particles of, which is fine. And you can use your fingers or a sponge, whatever you're more comfortable with. When I'm silk screening with pan pastel, I like to use my fingers because I can really make sure I'm getting it into the screen. I'm going to mix the two colors, first with the darker and then go over it with the lighter. Next, I'm using the Morning Meditation silk screen from CreateAlong to silk screen over the image with some dark green. This is Plantation Pine, Deco Art Americana. I love this silk screen. You want to place it with the brighter colored side against your clay sheet, and then silk screen, and be sure you wash it immediately afterwards so that it's ready for use next time. Once that paint was dry, I decided to come back with the original silk screen, the Trip to India, and that lighter green, sort of a chartreuse color, pan pastel, and just to add more touches of it over the silk screening here and there. And I'm using my craft knife to hand cut some leaves in different sizes, some with stems and some without. I used some raw umber, dark brown, pan pastel, and an applicator to just add a bit of outline shadowing around the outside of those leaves to mimic the original gel printed leaves. I took the same craft knife and I'm going to cut out some of the roses. I want a few random sized roses, as whole as I can get them, basically. This is a very forgiving pattern, so it won't really show if I'm catching a piece of another one when I cut these out individually. I rolled some scrap black clay to a setting 4, and I'm using some white acrylic paint, and I'm just going to use the end of a toothpick and make polka dots all over the surface of this. This is to mimic the stems on the pink flowers in the original gel print. Now it's time to start assembling. Again, I'm using that original gel print as my inspiration, and I'm just going to begin adding my elements and arranging them the other flowers as I like until I'm happy with the overall composition. For the yellow flowers, I'm going to place them where I want them, and then I'm going to add some centers, and I'm just using scrap brown clay. I'm going to make a small ball and place it in the center, and then just use a texture tool of some type to rough it up a bit and give it some texture. If you look closely at that original gel print, the yellow flowers have a bit of almost a sponged effect of turquoise here and there, and I'm using some turquoise acrylic paint and just a rag to apply that a little bit here and there on those yellow flowers. Flatten the edges of the petals on the pink flowers and give it a bit more of an organic feel. I'm just using a sphere tool and pressing around the edges of each of the petals a bit. The original print has a bit of an outline effect here and there, and to achieve that I'm using some black StazOn ink. I'm using an ink pad, but you could use the refill too, and a toothpick. And I'm just going to color the toothpick with the ink and then sort of scratch draw here and there on the flowers to mimic the original print. Here's the finished slab inspired by Marilyn's beautiful gel print project. I cut out some assorted shapes to make pendants with my slab, and I'd like you to share your ideas on how I could finish these pendants. Post your comments and ideas in the Polymer Clay Tribe Facebook group. For more inspiration, join our Polymer Clay Tribe Facebook page. Over 18,000 members sharing projects every day. For lots more creative polymer clay ideas, visit the PolymerClayTV blog.